The press has to respect others around them. They had no right to come into that ceremony and be obnoxious by yelling questions at the president as he walked away. I understand that they do need some way to get the stories, but I think that respect has a lot to do with it also. The president did not walk into the Rose Garden on October 5th to deliver a press conference. He walked in there to deliver a speech to schools of excellence and tell them to keep up the good work. The press gets plenty of time as it is without using someone else's. Fast forward exactly 20 years. And as chief White House correspondent for Fox News, an older Bret Baier was back in that Rose Garden, yelling questions at then-President George W. Bush as he walked away from the podium. Older and wiser, I understood more fully that such questions, uncomfortable as they may be, are the bedrock of our free press. Fast forward 10 years from there, and as Fox News chief political anchor and host of Special Report with Bret Baier, I now regularly invite then Education Secretary, now radio talk show host, Bill Bennett on the Special Report panel to talk about the stories of the day. Bennett often lists the ways in which the White House press corps seems to have it out for President Donald Trump. From that October 5th, 1987 Rose Garden event at the White House to now, it all comes full circle. Which brings me back to the Reagan Library in Simi Valley. In early 2017, I went there during my 3 days in January book tour to deliver a speech about President and General Eisenhower, telling a packed house stories of a humble leader who had never forgotten his small-town roots in Abilene, Kansas. At a homecoming speech in 1945, General Eisenhower said, "The proudest thing I can claim is that I am from Abilene." A few years later, he became president. Running for a second term shortly before Election Day 1956, President Eisenhower took questions from viewers in a made-for-TV event called The People Ask the President. Ike again hearkened back, as he often did, to Abilene, saying, "I belong to a family of boys who were raised in meager circumstances in central Kansas, and every one of us earned our way as we went along, and it never occurred to us that we were poor, but we were." There are many similarities between the 34th and the 40th presidents, but one of the deepest was their small-town sensibility. Marlin Fitzwater, President Reagan's press secretary, who happened to be from Abilene, Kansas, saw this connection between the two men. Governor and then President Reagan always took the conversation back to Dixon, Illinois, where he grew up, Fitzwater told me. "I've always believed the absolute biggest and most compelling force in Ronald Reagan's life was the goodness that he saw in the American people, and that is a small-town goodness. People in Abilene and Dixon believe in each other, believe in the country, and basically, they just think their friends and neighbors are good people." Reagan thought that to his last day. Presidents Reagan and Eisenhower knew themselves and knew how they felt about America. They were both just decent guys, shared small-town values. And with that connective tissue, from the focus of my first book in the 3 Days Presidential series, I've found the second, President Ronald Reagan, his speech to students at Moscow State University during the final summit with the Soviets, and how he arrived at that point, and those messages throughout his life. Its publication will come on the 30th anniversary of the Moscow Summit, a fitting memorial at a moment in history when we once again face forces of evil on a global scale. Like Eisenhower, Reagan is a leader we turn to still. Barely a day goes by when someone, a colleague, a viewer, a friend, a person on my social media feed, doesn't mention Reagan, wondering what he'd have to say about the world we've inherited, or wishing we had him back. He continues to speak to us as we navigate these uneasy times. He would have preached vigilance. "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction," he said in 1961, long before becoming president. We didn't pass it on to our children in their bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Bret Baier, May 2018.